You should now have entered in all the data from the sample surveys provided. After you have entered in the data, you should now see a spreadsheet under the Data View pane that is full of numbers like so. There should be 12 rows filled out since we only had 12 cases, and each cell within these rows should have one number under each of the variable column headings. As you might have noticed, there is a lot of room for error when entering data into SPSS. For this reason, it is imperative to check for errors before we can begin any analysis or manipulation of variables. Checking for errors will require us to run a frequency command on each of the variables in our dataset. To check for errors, we will run a frequency command by accessing it from the Analyze menu at the top of the SPSS Data Editor window. Let's try it. Bring the mouse over the Analyze option at the top of the Data Editor window and click. Bring the mouse over the Descriptive Statistics option and the Descriptive Statistics submenu should appear. Click on Frequencies. As you can see, the Frequencies option window has opened. You will also notice two boxes. One has our list of variables in your dataset, and the other is blank, headed Variables. In order to tell SPSS which variables to run the frequency commands with, we have to select the variables from our variable list and place them under the variable box on the right by clicking on the arrow button in the center of the Frequencies option window. Let's begin. So we'll start with Participant ID. Click on the middle arrow, and you'll notice that it has showed up in the Variables box. Let's bring the rest of them over. As you can see, the variables have moved from our list to the Variables box. Note that if we wanted to remove variables from the variable box back to our list, we would have to select the variable and re-click the arrow button in the center. After placing all variables in the right box, make sure that the Display Frequencies Tables box is checked. You will also notice that there are buttons on the right side of this window labeled Statistics, Charts, Format, and Bootstrap. We will only be using the Statistics button for this exercise, so let's click on it now. As you can see, a Frequency Statistics option window has opened up, providing several checkboxes, allowing us to tell SPSS which measures of central tendency and dispersion to display. There are also options associated with percentile values and distribution that we will not be using for this tutorial. For now, we are only interested in checking for errors. So let's select minimum and maximum values for now by clicking on the boxes under Dispersion. After you have clicked minimum and maximum, click Continue. Then click the OK button on the Frequencies window. After clicking on the OK button, you will notice that a new window has appeared. This is the SPSS Output window. Notice that this window has two panes, displayed each with its own bottom and right scroll bars. The left pane contains what's called the Output Index. By clicking at any listed index, the right pane will move to the corresponding result context. So for instance, if we clicked on Main Source of Support, the last question on our survey, we would get to the frequency table for that variable. This would be highly useful for data sets containing many variables. The right pane is what we are most interested in reviewing. This contains the results of your frequency command. For now, we will focus our attention on the right pane, which displays the results of our analysis. Notice that our output has created several tables. The first, headed Statistics, shows us the number of valid and missing cases for each variable in our dataset. It also displays the minimum and maximum values for each variable, which is displayed as the column headings for our statistics table. Since we did not find any unanswered items in our survey, all of the missing frequencies for our variable should equal 0, which is the case here. If you had failed to enter any data into the cells of the Data View window, while entering data from the surveys, you would be able to catch that mistake here. You can also see the minimum and maximum values for each of our variables. If we had entered in data outside of the range of possible values for any of our variables in our data set, we would be able to identify this error here. The remaining boxes are the frequency tables, which presents all the entered responses in the first column, the frequency or number of cases associated with each response, and the percent or proportion of cases associated with each response in the second column. The third column is headed valid percent, which provides the frequency percentages associated with each response, omitting any missing cases for that variable. Since we have no missing cases in this dataset, our percent and valid percent columns should be equal, as you can see here. The cumulative percent column will be described in a future tutorial. For now, we are mainly interested in the first two columns. Now, let's take a look at the frequency tables for our other variables. Note that all the frequency tables are headed by our variable labels rather than the names. The first frequency table represents the frequency of participant ID numbers. Again, we can see that everything looks good so far, as each ID should have a raw count of 1. As each participant should have a unique ID and no ID should ever be repeated. Furthermore, you can see that the values are numbered 1 to 12, since the participant ID numbers ranged from 1 to 12. If there were any other numbers outside of that range displayed here, we would have to correct them in the Data View window of the SPSS Data Editor. Let's move down to our age variable. The frequency table for our age variable also appears good, as there doesn't appear to be any ages that look unusual. Note that if we knew our sample consisted of adults only, we would not expect to see any ages under 18. Our next variable is sex of participant. Again, the only codes are male and female. If we had entered in an alternative number that did not fit our value code, such as 4 and above, we would catch the error here, as there would be male, female, and then the number 4. We can scroll down to the remaining variables and see that no errors have been made with regards to entering undefined values. Note that this check does not account for all errors. If you accidentally entered in data for a participant that was a valid response but not the response originally reported in the survey, it would be challenging to catch this error, say if you typed in a value indicating someone was male when they reported being female. For this reason, it is important you take the utmost care when entering your data. It helps to have a second enterer to double-check all the surveys entered into your data set to reduce the human error associated with data entry. This concludes the data entry tutorial. The next tutorial will review running descriptives with SPSS statistics.